You laughed a little too hard. Maybe you sneezed. Maybe you just stood up too fast. And in that one unguarded second, something happened that no one talks about, but almost every woman over 40 has felt. That sudden, humiliating rush, that silent panic, that moment where you look around the room, hoping no one noticed. And then the quiet decision you made maybe weeks ago, maybe years ago, to just manage it, to wear darker pants, to avoid jumping, to always know where the nearest bathroom is, to stop going to yoga, to laugh a little less freely. If any part of that sounds familiar, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because what I'm about to share is not what your doctor told you. It is not what the pads and liners industry wants you to believe. And it is not something most women discover until they've already spent years quietly suffering in ways they never had to. My name is Dr. Eleanor Whitaker. I've spent over 2 decades working in women's hormonal health. And in that time, I've sat across from thousands of women, brilliant, strong, capable women, who had quietly accepted that leaking when they laugh, sneeze, or cough was just part of getting older. Part of being a woman. Something to manage, not something to solve. I want to tell you right now, that is one of the most damaging lies our medical culture tells women. And today, I'm going to explain exactly why it happens, what is actually going on inside your body, and what the real solution looks like, the one that addresses the root, not just the symptom. Let me ask you something first. When was the last time you felt completely confident in your body? Not just physically, but that deep sense of ease, where you didn't have to think about where the bathroom was, didn't have to cross your legs when you sneezed, didn't have to mentally calculate whether you could make it through a meeting without a sudden urgent feeling that couldn't wait. For a lot of the women I work with, they can't even remember because the shift happened so gradually, so quietly, that by the time they noticed, it had already become their new normal. Here's what most people, including most general practitioners, don't understand about urinary leaking in women over 40. They treat it as a mechanical problem. Weak muscles. Just do your Kegels. Buy some pads. Maybe consider surgery if it gets bad enough. And while pelvic floor exercises absolutely have a role to play, that explanation is dangerously incomplete because it ignores the most powerful driver of what's happening in your body right now. It ignores your hormones, your bladder, your urethra, the entire pelvic floor. All of that tissue is densely packed with estrogen receptors. When estrogen is abundant, as it is in your 20s and 30s, that tissue stays thick, elastic, well-hydrated, and strong. It responds to pressure correctly. It holds. It works. But beginning as early as your mid-30s and accelerating sharply in perimenopause and menopause, estrogen levels begin to fall. And when estrogen falls, the tissue around your bladder and urethra begins to thin. It becomes less elastic. It loses tone. It loses its ability to respond correctly to sudden increases in pressure, like a sneeze, a laugh, a jump, a cough. This is not weakness you caused. This is biology responding to a hormonal shift that no one ever adequately warned you about. And here is the part that almost no one tells you. The urinary symptoms are often just the most visible sign of something much larger happening beneath the surface, because that same estrogen decline that's affecting your bladder tissue is also affecting your brain chemistry, your metabolism, your cardiovascular system, your bone density, your skin, your sleep architecture, and your emotional regulation. The leaking is not the problem. The leaking is the signal. Your body trying to get your attention, telling you that something has changed, something needs support, and continuing to ignore it will not make things easier with time. Think about the other things you've noticed over the past few years. The mornings where you wake up already tired, even after a full night's sleep. The way your body seems to hold on to weight now, especially around the middle, despite eating the same way you always have. The moods that shift without warning, irritability that comes out of nowhere, a kind of low-grade sadness that's hard to explain. The nights where you're exhausted but can't fall asleep, or fall asleep and wake at 3 in the morning with your mind racing and your body warm. The brain fog, the feeling that you're operating at 60% of who you used to be. These are not separate problems. They are all connected, and they all trace back to the same root, a hormonal system that is shifting, declining, and desperately looking for support. Most women spend years trying to solve these symptoms one at a time. A sleep aid for the insomnia, an antidepressant for the mood changes, a diet for the weight, pads for the leaking. And what happens? Nothing truly gets better because you're treating the branches while ignoring the root. You're putting bandages on signals your body is trying to send. Here's the thing about estrogen that most people don't understand. It doesn't just disappear at a fixed age like a switch flipping off. It declines over a period of years, sometimes a decade or more, in a pattern that is influenced by your stress levels, your diet, your sleep, your gut health, your exposure to environmental compounds that mimic or disrupt hormonal signals, and a dozen other factors, which means that for many women, the decline can be steeper and faster than it needs to be. And it also means that there are ways to support the body through this transition that go far beyond simply accepting it as inevitable. Your pelvic floor is a hammock of muscles, connective tissue, and nerve pathways that supports your bladder, uterus, and bowel. When estrogen is adequate, this hammock is supple, responsive, and strong. When estrogen falls, the hammock sags, the connective tissue stiffens, the nerve signals become less reliable, and no amount of Kegel exercises can fully compensate for tissue that has lost its hormonal support. This is why so many women do their exercises faithfully and still find that the leaking doesn't fully resolve. They're strengthening muscle in a tissue environment that isn't receiving the signals it needs to respond. The trick. And I use that word carefully because it isn't a trick so much as a fundamental shift in approach, is to address the hormonal foundation while also supporting the structural recovery of the pelvic floor. When you do both together, the results women experience are dramatically different from what they get from exercises alone. Now, I want to pause here because something important needs to be said. If you've been living with urinary leaking and you've told yourself it's just part of getting older, I want you to hear this clearly. This is not your fault. This is not a character flaw. This is not evidence that your body has failed you. Your body has been doing exactly what bodies do in the absence of the hormonal support they need. And the fact that you've been managing it quietly without complaining, without telling most people in your life, that speaks to a kind of resilience that is incredibly common in women and incredibly underacknowledged. But managing is not the same as resolving. And you deserve more than a lifetime of pad changes and bathroom calculations. There is a growing body of research around natural compounds that support estrogen-sensitive tissue, plant-derived compounds called phytoestrogens, adaptogenic herbs that help the body regulate its own hormonal signals, and targeted nutritional support for the cellular health of pelvic floor tissue. These are not pharmaceutical interventions. They are not synthetic hormones. They are natural allies that work with your body's own systems, not in place of them. And for many women, particularly those who are in perimenopause or the early years of menopause, supporting the body this way creates a shift that goes well beyond the bladder. Sleep improves. Energy returns. Mood stabilizes. The body begins to feel like something you inhabit rather than something you fight. I've seen this happen in my practice more times than I can count. Women who came in certain that their best years were behind them, that they just had to accept the slow decline, who discovered that their bodies were capable of far more recovery than they'd ever been told. The key was giving their system what it was missing, not waiting and managing, but actively supporting the transition. If you're watching this and thinking, I've tried things before and nothing worked, I hear you. And I want to explain why that happens. Most products that target women's bladder symptoms or hormonal health address symptoms in isolation. They don't understand that the pelvic floor and the hormonal system are part of the same ecosystem. They give you one piece of the puzzle. What actually creates lasting change is addressing the ecosystem, supporting estrogen-sensitive tissue, supporting the regulatory mechanisms that help the body balance its own hormonal signals, and giving the structural recovery what it needs to actually take hold. This is not something that happens overnight, but it also doesn't take years. When women begin supporting their body at this deeper level, many begin noticing changes within the first few weeks. Less urgency, fewer leaks, better sleep, more energy in the mornings, a kind of steadiness that they hadn't felt in a long time. These are not placebo effects. These are signs of a body that is receiving what it needed and beginning to respond. I want to be very clear about something. The link you'll find below this video, in the description and in the first pinned comment, is not a miracle product. I don't believe in miracles. I believe in mechanisms. I believe in understanding what your body needs and giving it that support in a form that works. What you'll find, there is a method that addresses the hormonal root of pelvic floor weakness, supports the tissue recovery that estrogen decline has interrupted, and has helped thousands of women begin to feel like themselves again. Not a version of themselves that manages symptoms. The version that lives freely, laughs without fear, and stops planning their entire day around bathroom access. The women who found this and acted on it did not do so because they were desperate. They did so because they were paying attention, because somewhere inside them, they knew that what they were experiencing was a signal, and that signals exist to be heard, not silenced with a pad. Here is what I know about how hormonal decline works over time. It does not plateau. It does not stabilize on its own. Without support, the tissue continues to thin. The urgency becomes more frequent. The leaking becomes harder to predict and harder to control. The other symptoms, the weight, the sleep, the mood, the brain fog, tend to compound. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, in ways that accumulate over months and years into a life that feels significantly smaller than the one you wanted. The women who wait, who decide to manage for a little longer before doing something, almost universally tell me the same thing when they finally come in: I wish I had done this sooner. Not because the window closes completely, but because the longer the tissue goes without support, the more recovery requires. The body at 43 responds faster than the body at 51. The body in early perimenopause has more elasticity to work with than the body 3 years into full menopause. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to give you an accurate picture of why timing matters and why choosing to act now, not next month, not after the holidays, now, is genuinely the more compassionate choice you can make for yourself. You've spent long enough managing this quietly, long enough planning around it, long enough excusing yourself from the things you love, long enough laughing a little less freely than you deserve to. The link below this video will take you to more information about the method that I and thousands of women have found to be the most effective natural approach to supporting pelvic floor recovery at the hormonal level. Read it carefully. It will make sense to you immediately because it addresses what you already know in your body, that something shifted, that it wasn't supposed to be this way, and that you don't have to keep accepting it. Your body sent you a signal. You followed it here. Don't stop now.